Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Battlefield Project podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Rhoda, and this is the podcast for people who understand that life is a battle and only the strong will thrive. I'm joined by my friend, Brent, Knott here, who I'm going to introduce in a minute. But before I do, I'm going to ask for one favor. If you watch this episode and you get any value out of it, if it teaches you anything, if you learn anything, if it makes you laugh, whatever, and you think there's someone that you know, friend, family member, associate, who might benefit from hearing the message that Brent is about to share with you, really appreciate if you share it. The goal of this podcast is to inspire other people and to let everybody out there know that every single human being on this earth has to go through their own battles. The difference between happy people and sad people and successful people and people not successful is some of us fight our way through those battles and we get stronger because of it, and others kind of just get beat up by life. They play the victim card and they give up. So I'm sure whatever Brent shares here in a couple of minutes is going to inspire you. So if it does, please share it with somebody that you know that could benefit from hearing this message. All right. And without further ado, let me introduce my friend here, Brent. He's 34 years old, has been married for 10 years. He owns and operates Design It Wraps for the last 9 years. Torque CRM launched in January 2020. I cut off the last number there. When was that launched?
2023.
So very recently. He enjoys playing music, specifically the guitar, even though he doesn't do it enough. He has no kids, but he has three. I'm going to pronounce this wrong. All right, you got, who are basically like kids. He's a product of sweat equity, which I love because he had a mentor at 23 show him how the business world works. He's on a mission to help technicians and companies learn to become better leaders, which then allows for opportunities for all that surround them. He recently lost 80 pounds during 2022, and a friend challenged him to go for a run on January 28th. So he's going, I was just talking to him before this record button was hit. He's going to be running his first 50-mile event tomorrow, which I've done a couple of them, and I respect the shit out of that because it's certainly not a distance to be messed with unless you, more than anything, mental toughness, man. Like physical, like we can all probably agree that it's going to be a physical challenge, but the mental toughness part of it is what you're going to find to be the most rewarding part, I think, at the end of it, to be like, hell yeah, I just forced my way through that, man. So congratulations in advance on completing that run. I have no doubt that you will, and thanks for being on the show, man.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, whatever battle you've experienced or are experiencing currently that you're comfortable sharing with our audience, and kind of what that battle is and how you fought your way through it or are fighting your way through it, I'd love to hear about it, and so would the audience.
Yeah, so I mean, the first one that came to my mind was I've watched one or two episodes. I didn't know that was the primary format, but I did watch like Adam McChesney's episode. And so when you were kind of reviewing that with me, the first thing that really came to mind was like this battle of transitioning from where, in my field specifically, I think this is probably a lot of other fields, I just don't have experience in it. I was the artist or the professional or the skill within the entity, and nobody could do it as good as me. And all these little, things that I told myself and held on to forever, basically just excuses. And, essentially the transition away from that, especially when you, like, the further along you take that, the worse it gets, because you're training your customer to do business in a certain kind of manner, which was basically interrupt my day, which is okay because I was allowing it, right? It wasn't necessarily that it was a bad thing, but it became a problem later as we transitioned to more of a professional business versus a sole, me as the talent.
Yep.
So that's definitely the hardest thing that I've done. And then, obviously in tandem with that, there's sacrifices that when you first start a business, regardless of how much help you have or not, I had a mentor, but he's tough love. So he was not in the business. He just mentored me. Basically time is what usually gets given. So time went away from everything else except for the business. And so, my wife had to deal with that for well over 7 years, and, it took its toll.
Yeah.
Now, obviously we're working towards, reforging that and, fixing that all up, but it's definitely done its toll. Yeah. And regardless of, where we're at now, that when I do have that, like the ox is in the ditch and you got to pull it out, guess what? PTSD strikes, and it's like, oh, it's just this again.
Yeah, here we go.
Uh,
Open that can of worms up.
exactly. So I would say it's definitely been the hardest thing is that hiring additional people. We hired 6 people last year. Um, so we're up to 11 staff
Okay.
members, and fully removing myself from the back.
Yeah.
Was just like, I mean, the most difficult thing. I went through a whole a lot of people have imposter syndrome as far as sitting in a room with a bunch of other people. I had imposter syndrome with myself because I wasn't producing.
Yeah.
So it was
How much of the business, how much out of the business are you right now? 100%, or are there still like day-to-day
no,
like operations that you're involved in and you're just slowly but surely getting out, or like what's the breakdown of that? What's that look like?
I would say that for right now, I would say in the near next 5 years, I'm definitely going to be in the business. It's
Yeah.
just more of the breakup. I'm about 90% not in production anymore. And
Okay.
so I'm more on the front end, rubbing shoulders, shaking hands, kissing babies.
Yeah.
Um, and and then also drawing up the vision for the business, keeping the culture intact, training when I need to,
Yeah.
because I am skilled in the field, and then systems and processes basically.
Yeah. Dude, we're on like the exact same journey right now, like exact same path, exact same journey. This is 10 years for you, you said? You've been in this business
Yeah.
10 years? Yeah,
It
we're
took
like
me like 8.5 before I really pulled the trigger on believing in
going
myself to be.
all in on it. Yeah. We're like 12, I think 12 or 13 years into it, 13 this year. And I still do, I'd say 20, 30% of my time is spent in the business. And I want to get that to like zero almost. It's like that's my goal, and work on it. And then like all the things you listed are what I currently do in addition to that, but I just want to focus solely on that. I've said to people, and you'll probably agree with this, it sounds to me like you recently started that transition, like it hasn't been from day one. I've said to people who are like going into business, I was on a podcast, it might even have been Adams, when I was on his podcast, and they asked like, what would you tell like a business owner, an entrepreneur starting out? And I was like, document everything from day one and create systems from day one. I was like, because for us, we were 9, 10, probably 10 years into the business before I was like, okay, like I know, and I read all the books, E-Myth Revisited. I read that before I even started the business, and right away it's like on the business, not in the business. So that verbiage has been in my psyche for 15 years, and I just never executed on it, but I knew I should. And I waited a decade. And now like,
Yep.
a decade into it, and you've got 35 clients or whatever that we're servicing on a monthly basis. We've got 25 independent contractors doing work. And it's like, oh shit, and I got to put systems and processes in place with 10 years of not crap, but like 10 years of data and information and stuff built up. Like, God, I wish I would have done this from day one. Like, it would have been so much easier just to start, like, first task, this is how I do it, done. Second task, this is how I do it, done. And now I'm like, what tasks do I do? I'm like, oh my God, I do so many different things. Like, now I got to create like written documents, video tutorials for every single one of these things. So I hate to say it's such a headache. It's not my favorite thing to do in the world at all. Like, I'm like the creative visionary, like you said, relationship builder. Like, that's where I love spending my time. So to have to go to such a granular level to do these kinds of things, it drives me nuts. But I'm like, man, the only way I can like get to that next level and be 0% in the business or 5% in the business and 95 to 100% on it is to go through this crap and like to go through this challenging time. So yeah, hearing you explain, I'm like, man, like, and you probably talk to business owners all the time. Like, it's such a common, I'll call it a disease. It's not a disease, but like such a common disease of like the business owners. Like, I can do everything the best. Like, no one else is going to review the social media posts for all of our clients because I'm the best like reviewer and the most creative person in the world. So I'll catch everything before it gets out the door. And now I'm like, I can't believe I did that for like 4 years. And like now we have someone else who does it and is way better than me. And I'm like, fucking idiot, Matt. Like, you should have done this 7 years ago or 10 years ago. So I think it's something we all struggle with, man.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to let go. I think it depends on how you're wired. I mean, some people are wired busy bees and like the worker
Yeah.
mentality. That's just how I was wired. Um, and so to change your mental shift to doing something that doesn't immediately create a return is very hard to get out of, and it's also a trap.
Yeah.
Like, I even teach my installers, like, hey, I'm teaching you this leadership stuff or how to think, because your commission stops when you go on vacation.
Yeah.
So how do we create overrides, or how do we create some form of team under you to where you're still making money no matter if you're here or not, or if you have an emergency? How do you actually create freedom for yourself? And we're starting to build those building blocks ahead of time for them, to where maybe I can help them collapse time just like somebody else helped me collapse time. Because if I didn't have the mentor I had, I mean, I'd probably be another 10 years, because I'm just stubborn, grinding away at the stone, you know?
Yeah.
I would say, I'm sure you've done this. Have you ever had a moment where, now that you're fully bought in on this, like, hey, I'm going to build out these systems, I'm going to do this the right way, and I'm tired of putting band-aids on the business, right? Because that was one of my employees told me that. He says, hard to tell what's wrong inside of the business when you're up here at night while it's hemorrhaging and you are putting band-aids on everything.
Yeah. Well said.
And I was like, good point. So I literally like took 2 months and just like went home at 5 o'clock every day and let it bleed.
Yeah.
And you know, it was painful, but the part that was most difficult for me though is whenever like somebody comes in your door, like, they, for the most part, they ask themselves questions and they try to answer it. And there's the second side of this, where they'll come in and they'll be like, hey, I have a question, and what do we do for this? And like, you're working right now, because like right now my role is literally sit in the office and just write this stuff. Right? Like, it fun. And so I'm all in on it. So I'm over here just doing this process up here, and I get asked a question for right here. But if I answer that question when they walk in the door, I'm technically putting a band-aid on it, because I don't actually have a structured thing for it. And so it's like, they see my face and they kind of get upset that they asked me a question, because it's more that I'm mad at myself for not even having it.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, you just called me out in the moment. Like, damn, I'd like, it should be instantaneous. Like, I'm getting there. Give me a couple minutes or hours or days, whatever it is.
Like, if it could just be 2 days later, but now I have to answer the question, give them a Band-Aid, and make sure that they know that that's not actually right.
Yeah.
If it's reactive, essentially.
Yeah.
That reactive state sucks. But the second part that's really hard is when you get your team bought in on it, is the balance of when they actually ask you questions and when they only think for themselves. Because sometimes they'll hang themselves up all day on one thing, and all they had to do is ask.
And they're like, it's not the time. It's like, no, that was the perfect time. When we first started delegating roles, because in the beginning of the business it was just me and my brother, and then we brought in my brother's wife as like project manager. And for a while I was like, Kat, her name, I was like, Kat, CC me on like every email that you send to a client, just so I can like stay in the loop. And like, you know, me being like, if something was said differently than how I would have said it, like I'll talk to her on the side and be like, this is how I would approached it. And then at one point it's just like, okay, I got to stop. Like, I'm wasting time and energy worrying about the sentence structure, like all this nonsense. I'm like, as long as like the clients are happy and she's confident in her response, like, you don't need me. Like, you're a smart human being. Like, you could run the show if you wanted. Like, only come to me if you're really, really stumped. And like, there's times will come. So like, the door is always open. But like, if you think you got the answer and you're good and you're confident, like, just send it and let's roll. So it's a good balancing act for them to learn too.
Yeah. Well, they have to think for themselves. That's something I heard at a meetup last year. Is basically a coach is somebody who teaches you how to, or they teach you how to run plays of theirs, but a mentor teaches you how to create your own. So
well said.
And that way, you know, it's easy to just tell somebody what to do. That's micromanaging. But teaching them how to think, of how to make decisions and how to think like you, or even how to think like themselves with maybe some of your ideals in mind. That's a whole different superpower.
It's tough. I think that's what makes a good leader though.
Because sometimes the answer is actually like the most painful part. Like, it's a controlled failure potentially.
Exactly. You're like watching the plane crash. And you're like, okay, just get it over with. Then let's do cleanup. Let's get into cleanup mode. But we got to let it crash first, so they know next time don't go that way.
That's the only reason why you know not to go that way.
Because the plane crashed times. Totally right, man. Let me ask you, how you mentioned, you know, the sacrifice of time, which I think is an extremely important part of understanding like the entrepreneur business owner's journey, because the 9 to 5, it's time away, but it's like clock in, I go to the office, I work from 9, 5 o'clock hits, I punch out, I'm home by 5:30 or 6. And I don't really have to think about it like the business, because that's my job and I'm not at my job, I'm at my house. So there's a clear separation with, business owners, entrepreneurs. There's never technically that clear separation. Like even when you're home, sometimes you're working because it's your business. How fast it grows is how fast and how much time, energy you pour into it. So you had to make that sacrifice, which many of us have, and it caused a little bit of friction between you and your wife. How did that friction become less? Was it like you started not working less, but like organizing your time better? Was it her understanding that like what your vision is for this and your family, and that's she started like support it in different ways? Like what did that transition look like from rockier times to, okay, now we're getting our footing, we're feeling like we're in a better space?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's in a better space yet. And that's kind of just full transparency. Like, it's not great. And really, it's just because you have to write new contracts with people, that being your customers and everything. And like that's why I feel like not yesterday, but last year was so painful, was because once when I commit to something with like, finally, like I'm stubborn as hell, like that's technically a commitment to choose to be at that point that I was at, right? So when I finally shift to the right stubbornness, I'm pretty stubborn there too. And so like I'm pretty diligent with that. But the people still view you from the same lens in a way. Like it has to be proven. Oh, this is just a phase. Oh, this is just that. And so it's still in kind of that time. And we're definitely very transparent.
Which you got the transparency in the back left of that image there with the core value.
Core values, transparency. It's the ultimate form of integrity.
Absolutely, it is, man.
So we have those hard talks and whatnot, and so we're definitely working towards the harder thing to do is to stay together. Instead of giving up is actually the easy thing to do, like it's just to move on and then think that solved anything, and it didn't. So, that's kind of what got me into the running a little bit, was I did become entitled and all that stuff, where I'm bringing the money home, like you should respect that and all that stuff. But like, congrats, you did your job. Like that's my job, right? There's no trophy for that. There's no it's what you're supposed to do. So everything else on top of that's really what's the extra. And so it's been interesting. I started off with the physical fitness, and obviously that kind of takes time because I went all in on it too. But it gave me a lot of time to think, like a lot of time to think. And you've done these long runs, like your mind wanders and like,
you're all over it.
It'll take you to places you didn't even realize that you were harboring or anything. I've been in the middle of a 15-mile run crying because of something I thought about that I didn't even realize I was either holding on to or whatever. And people are like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm just happy."
Like I'm releasing emotion. Like this feels
right. I'm not physically hurting. It's all in my head. But so I mean, we'll see what comes of it. I know that regardless of what occurs, that 100% will be given. So
that's awesome.
But it's just something to look out for. Like I don't remember who told this story. I don't know. It might have been in a book. No, it was actually Alex Ramosi at one of his keynotes, and he was saying like if let's just say the mob or some bad people came to your door and like they were there and they weren't playing around and they're like, we're going to do XYZ. Well, the first thing that you would do is give up your money. And the second thing that you would do out of all basically you had three choices. You had to give up your money, give up your skills, or give up your family. Second thing is you would give up your skills.
Yeah.
And the third thing is you'd give up your family. So like you have to figure out how to balance it.
Yeah.
And I think that's harder than trying to hire help and because there's four different decisions that's being made at the same time.
Yeah.
For fitness, for faith, for finances, and family.
Yeah. So true.
And a lot of people are extremely fit and everything else is in shambles. A lot of people
Yep.
are really successful and everything else is in shambles. And I know fortunately have surrounded myself with people that are pretty 3 and 4 dimensional.
Yeah.
And that's been a great help because it gives you a different lens on life.
I was just talking to my buddy this morning about, he works in corporate America and he's climbing the ladder pretty quick, doing really, really good. He just kind of found a new lease on life in terms of like fitness and like kind of getting focused and discipline and living that lifestyle. And that's what he said. He was like, yeah, like I think the president of his company, he's like, years ago, like I looked at this guy, like he was the man, like makes big bucks, like he's at the top of the food chain. Like I want to be like him. He's like, but he's like really fat and overweight. And like, but at the time, like, he's like, I thought nothing of it. Like this guy's the top alpha. He's like top of the food chain. He's like, and now that he's starting to piece together his life in a way that the four things that you just mentioned, working together and being in harmony, makes so much sense to him. He was like, I wouldn't want his life for anything. He's like, because I know he's not healthy. I know his like home life is a wreck. He's like, yeah, he's got the finances because he's a top dog in the company. He's like, but outside of that, like he's got nothing going for him. And I'm like, dude, that summarizes my purpose on this earth. And like my mission on this earth is to, like you said, like cover all four of those bases. And some I'm going to be stronger than others at different times in my life. There's going to be ebb and flow, and I'm comfortable with that. But making sure that I don't turn my back or like have a blind eye to any one of those four, 2 or 3 of those 4 things at any moment, because what's the point of making, $10 million a year if your wife doesn't want to be with you, or is cheating on you because you're such a douchebag, or like, you're always at work, or you make millions of dollars and you got a great family and you're traveling all over the world, but you die of a heart attack at 42 because you're slow, fat, and you're unhealthy. Like you got to have that harmony in those 4 different things. And it's not an easy thing to accomplish, but when you make that your goal, as opposed to I want to be the richest person in the world, or I want to be the most shredded person in the world, or whatever that looks like, it's a lot more attainable than if you're not even thinking about stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm a course junkie, unfortunately. But I just got done doing a thing with, do you know Michael Burnoff?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't.
Scottsdale, Arizona. His he is a very interesting presenter. I've never seen anybody present the way he does, the way he's all over the place. He had really bad ADD growing up, and he's turned it into a superpower because apparently it's how we learn.
Yeah.
It's 7-minute segments, right?
Okay.
And so he basically says he used 3 different people this last week in a comparison, and they were different ranges. One was a startup guy, one was like doing pretty well but in the middle, and then a third person was like highly successful, highly affluent, but still in the minutia of like the daily grind or whatever. Like they didn't have they weren't terribly fulfilled. They still felt like they were on the same grind that they were when they first started. So all 3 of them had the same experiences. And so on the comfort meter, that was a 1 through 6, and it went through to 9. His metaphor was a RPM meter on a car.
Yeah.
They said 7.5 is just uncomfortable enough and or extremely uncomfortable. So 7 to 7.5, he said, if you focused instead of your 1 to 6 tasks, if you only did your 7.5 tasks that make you extremely uncomfortable, everything else will fall into place.
Yeah.
And so he said, if you become a impactful or impressionable person of influence, that your sales will take care of themselves. Your team will take care of themselves.
Yep.
Like you don't have to do all the calls anymore because your close rate's just 90%. Like you're going to be meeting more people because you're doing something that maybe you didn't want to do, which was maybe going to some public speaking event. Who knows? But the point is now you're becoming a person of influence. And which is uncomfortable for most people.
And then you're attracting them to you as opposed to you having to seek them out constantly. It's just like the door's always open because they know that's the kind of person you are, and they walk through the door to you as opposed to you banging every door in the neighborhood and be like, hey, they got a cool product, they got a cool service. You could trust me. It's like, who the fuck are you? No, I don't.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was a interesting, like, started the class with like an intention because that's what he tells
Yeah.
you to do. And
Yeah.
like thing just takes a curveball like to what you would even expect it to be.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. So
That's awesome, man.
he's got a book called Average Sucks.
All right. I'll
And
make a note of it.
he calls everybody average
That's fair.
because you're the sum of your average. It doesn't matter if you're making $1 or $100 million. Like that guy might have been stuck there for 3 years and he can't figure out how to break through his average.
Yeah, which is still like a phenomenal average compared to the guy who's making 100,000 a year, but they're both average. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it's a really cool perspective.
I say it's a tough way of thinking about it, but yeah, I mean, you can't deny like the logic behind it once you start digging into it. That's cool, man. Awesome, man. Well, where can people find you online? If they do, you do stuff just locally where you're at with the rap stuff?
So
you mentioned, or
with our raps, we can service nationally.
okay.
So like currently we have a couple of raps going on for a couple of roofing companies in Texas, but we're based out of Florida. So that was one of the good things with being a technician for so long is I've met many through certifications. And so I've got a really strong network of installers across the country. But the company is Design It Wraps and Tint. And on Instagram, I think it's just at Design It Wraps. And then my personal page is I am not Brent because somebody took mine.
I love it. Yeah.
So had to settle basically. And but yeah, I mean, anybody can reach out. I do one-on-ones with people all the time. As far as just helping people, I've been greatly helped by many people, whether it be in Apex or real business owners with Trevor and Kale. So definitely just trying to givers gain.
Yeah, say plant seeds, man. Yep. Good for you, man. It's the way to live. And then, like you said, it always comes back some way without the intent of like, I'm going to do this because I know I'm going to get something on the back end. It's like, I'm going to do this because it feels good. And then, oh, cool. On the back end, I'm going to get something out of it too because givers gain. That works for me too.
What's interesting is when you actually flip the script, because everybody, like people do like giving, right? So it's a pretty interesting perspective. Have you ever read the book Give and Take?
I've not.
So there's 3 types of people. There's givers, there's matchers, and there's takers.
Okay.
And on the hierarchy of givers, matchers, and takers, givers are actually bottom of the totem pole. Matchers and takers are tied second and third, and givers are the number 1 in the ecosystem of wealth and influence.
Okay.
So givers are on the top and on the bottom. The bottom giver, they're on the bottom because they get taken advantage of because they haven't been able to figure out how to give without being taken advantage of. Yeah. So giving does not mean that you're necessarily nice, but giving means to truly do something for somebody and have no rope, string, nothing. There's nothing tied to it. Whether something comes of it, cool. It doesn't matter. I get it because it makes me feel good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes it really makes you audit yourself. It's like, man, am I a matcher then, or am I a giver?
Yeah.
Some people think that they're givers and really they're expecting something in return, but it doesn't mean that you can't flip the script and slowly learn how to be truly a giver. I think a long time ago, I was probably more of a matcher. Yeah. Because I would do stuff and I'm like, let's like pocket that card. Yeah. But once you truly become a legitimate just giver, man, so much comes your way. Yeah. It's insane. It just opens up the doors to so many things.
Yeah. And as an example, I do this podcast for the sole intent to maybe inspire one other human being on the earth that hears one episode that I share without any like views and subscribers. Like if that comes, cool, whatever. And I'm doing that. And I just talked to a guy earlier today who's in Apex and he does really well for himself with investing in real estate stuff. And we barely touched upon that during his episode. So after the show finished up and I messaged him on Facebook, I was like, thanks for being part of that. I was like, do you ever structure any deals where like you could teach someone like me, like real estate, and then whatever you help me create financially from that, like I kick back to you. So like, I don't have to pay for a coaching program, but it's worth your time. And he's like, dude, I'll teach you for free. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, so he's already like he's already mentored me before this call for like 45 minutes straight of like how many times to reach out on Zillow, what percent to offer, what the message should be, what to look like, this stuff that I'm like, holy, he's like, I'll jump on the phone with you and like these agents that are going to start reaching out to see if it's a good deal for you. I'll help you analyze. I'm like people pay a lot of money for that kind of coaching that just randomly on a Friday afternoon, I asked if I could create a deal where I thought like financially it would reward him. And he just wants to do it to like help me out. And I'm like, I received that, like, but like, what a cool feeling that when you, like you said, you give without expectation. Not in a million years would I've expected somebody to reach back out and be like, I'll teach you for free. Like I'll guide you on the path. And I'm like, what a win that is.
Yeah. So that mentor we talked about at the beginning.
Yep.
I didn't really go into it too much, just 'cause the last couple of ones I've done has been kind of about him at the beginning.
Yeah.
But very, very short version of that story. I was 23. I came in, wrapped his car, and he was profiling me, casing me the whole time, figuring out what I like, what was my personality like. I don't know. I guess he liked me.
Yeah.
But we wrapped a couple cars at a shop, and he asked me, what were my skills. He basically said that's the problem with this world, was that nobody teaches anybody how to be a leader or a manager, or to do a budget, or how to build a business plan. And so he then asked me, like, what would be the split equity wise. And so I basically set the company up at 70-30. He gave me the opportunity to set it up. I gave him 70.
Yeah.
And so from day one, it was interesting. Like around year 2, he was like, this could change your life. Like he was trying to get me to buy him out. This whole time. He knew I did a bad job at evaluating, like, because he was just quiet on the back end. He's just mentor, right? I'm doing a lot. He was financing all of it, as far as like I had his credit card on tap. But did all that, got year 7, owed him a lot of money because he had 70%. I go to try to buy him out and said, Mr. Bill, I can't buy you out, or I want to buy you out, but I don't have enough credit for what I need to buy you out for. And he's like, you made me plenty of money. Just give me $25. And so just like that guy with the real estate, I had somebody that literally changed my life. For $25. And so I grew up with that whole stink, not necessarily that my parents did it, but like me personally, where we didn't have a bad childhood. We didn't have a great, like, we were right, good, quote unquote, middle class. And you always hear rich people are evil, this and that, or successful people, this, whatever, money's bad.
They cheat to get ahead. And
dude, I've met more giving people. The difference is, and I think it's probably the biggest thing I've said today, is that they're the ones who are a little grumpy or a little short with people. It's because most people don't actually listen to what they have to say, because they tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear.
Correct. 100% agreed.
And most people don't know how to take that advice, because it's not actually the answer they wanted.
Totally agreed.
It's 100% what you need to do, though. So
awesome, man. I didn't expect to like last 7 minutes there go off on a different tangent with like giver's gain, but I think even that in and of itself, if an audience just heard the last 10 minutes what we talked about, could provide an immense amount of value to someone's life and change their lives. Because I think you and I are obviously both living examples, and we know a ton of people who are, that when you give for the sake of giving, because it makes you feel good, and it's what, in my opinion, what we're here on this earth to do. The universe, God rewards you immensely for living that lifestyle. So go out there and do it.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll put your links in the show notes when I upload this to YouTube in a week or two. I'll share it with you and share with our audience. If you're watching this episode, like I said, please share it with your friends and family. And my friend, good luck on your 50-mile race tomorrow, man. I'm sure you're going to crush it.
Let you know how it goes.
All right, man. All right, everybody. I'll see you on the battlefield.